Hi, I'm John Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. Make sure you're liking and subscribing on YouTube or Spotify. Of course, you can always keep up with your business resource information at brewermag.com. We'll have a new issue, our January, February issue, be hitting online very shortly and in your mailboxes soon after that. Well, of course, 2024 was a pretty crazy time for the first time in about 10 years. The closings were over the openings, and a lot of merger and acquisitions are going on. And some of those legacy brands that maybe have been around since the 80s or early 90s are starting to maybe age themselves as business owners out and wanting to have some new blood. And if it's not being run by within the family or being by someone that works there, sometimes keeping those alive mean acquisitions by younger companies. And one of those happening in the Boston area is Cambridge Brewing announced that they were closing their location, but they're going to live on with Island Brewing. So we had a chance to be able to talk to Adam Romanow, who was able to work with them, bring in the Cambridge brand, and be able to have it live on with Castle Island. And we're joined here on the Brewer Magazine podcast with Adam Romanow of Castle Island and now Cambridge Brewing. Adam, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm psyched to be here.
Obviously, we're in that cold streak. We just talked about that off air, but not a cold streak for Castle Island. You guys have been heating up a little bit on the business side of things. But we'll talk about that in a second. First things first, happy 9th anniversary. I know 2015 is going to be the upcoming of your 10th. You guys just hit 9 in December, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, December 11th was the official 9-year mark for us. So we're, 9 years and 1 month, 11 months counting for what I expect will be the biggest party we've thrown in the last 10 years.
Well, what are some of the things that got you guys through those 9 years? I mean, give a little history on, what Castle Island's been about, why you even wanted to start, and are you kind of where you wanted to be, do you think, after 9 years?
Yeah, of course. So we opened again December 2015. We were probably the last brewery to open in Massachusetts just as a manufacturing brewery. We did not have a tap room when we opened. One of the more foolish things we've ever done. 18 months in, we did end up adding one, but we really designed ourselves to be distribution focused and friendly from the start. So we built a 20,000 square foot warehouse with a 30 barrel brew house. Right out of the rip, we had about 10,000 barrels worth of capacity that we could fill. And we started brewing 3 flagship beers distributed through the Miller Coors network just in Massachusetts for the first kind of 2 years or so before we added that tap room. And once we did, that's when we really saw the brand start to take off. We added new year-round beers, new seasonals. And then during the pandemic, we actually opened a second location, which was supposed to open before the pandemic. Of course, it got delayed for the obvious reasons. We opened up in September of 2021, but that was a huge shot in the arm because our manufacturing facility, our headquarters, is in a town called Norwood. It's about 20 miles south of Boston. The second location where I am today is right in the heart of Boston. It's in the neighborhood of South Boston, which is only 2 miles from the landmark that gave us our namesake, Castle Island. So we're closer to home than we've ever been, and it's been huge for the brand. And the only other thing I'll add, because it's relevant to the Cambridge story that we're going to get into in a second, is during COVID, when all the bars and restaurants shut down, we lost about 50% of our distribution business because the taps weren't flowing. But that left us with a ton of empty tanks. We also had a canning line and cans, and we had a whole bunch of people in the industry who were looking for contract capacity. So we entered that space, did that to, keep people employed, keep beer in the tanks. We did, and since then, contract brewing has grown to represent about 25% of our annual business. And that's actually how our relationship with Cambridge began a little under a year ago. They came to us in March of 24, looking for a new place to contract out 2 of their flagship products. A deal got struck on that, and we started working with those guys, and the rest is history, but I'll save that for us to get into.
Yeah. And was contracting something that you had either done yourself or wanted to do, to be able to do that? I mean, how does that become part of that conversation? And it seems because of necessity.
It was definitely because of necessity. Truthfully, we had done it opportunistically here and there, just a couple of batches pre-COVID. just to help friends out in the industry, guys who didn't have a home but had a really cool brand and some good recipes. We wanted to help out. And then necessity struck certainly when we lost all that bar and restaurant business. But we had an opportunity to help other people while also keeping our staff employed. It helped us make ends meet. And it quickly became apparent that that was something that was going to be important to others and a huge part of our business. Now, as we're in sort of what the craft beer industry is going through with consolidation and closures, but still a ton of great brands, we found there's even more interest in contract services, especially where the sort of stigma of being a contract brand, which I never fully understood, but it seems like most of that's gone away, at least at the consumer level,
Right.
has really opened up a lot of people's minds towards contract brewing.
How's it made you guys a better company? I mean, if you repetition breeds understanding, right? So you guys are getting your reps in as brewers. I'm sure you're being able to work with people that have been knowledgeable in the industry. You've learned from them, they learn from you. I mean, there's a lot of positives there.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the first one, you nailed it on the head. The more work we can give our team, the better off they are for it. It also allows us to invest in the facility and in our team members. I mean, we're going to be hiring for a new full-time QC person because we're growing our contract business this year. If we didn't have that, that's not something we could do. On top of that, there's certainly some knowledge sharing that goes on. Everyone's recipes are theirs. We're very respectful of the fact that everyone's got their trade secrets. Nevertheless, we've picked up a lot of pointers, and others have picked up pointers from us when we work together and start kind of putting our heads together. Some things technical, some things a little more nuanced, but there's plenty to learn when you're working with other people who are, again, open-minded and friendly, like we've seen.
Sure. And Phil at Cambridge, definitely one of the veterans of the industry. Like you said, you got a chance to start to work with Cambridge in March of 24. You guys work on that aspect. I'm sure you guys are, talking a lot. How did it lead to taking over the Cambridge brand in December of this past year?
Yeah, well, I've known Phil and Will kind of on and off over the years, but just through the industry and as a consumer. Cambridge was the first craft brewery I ever went to. It's one of the first probably legal craft beers I ever drank, and so I had a lot of close personal connections to the brand, to the pub. And then when we started working with those guys back in March, we got to know them, got to know their process. They got to understand how we work. And finally, when it came time for them to announce in August that they were closing the pub, Phil approached us and said, hey, the pub's off the table. Unfortunately, that's closing regardless, but we'd love to see the brand stay alive. And would you guys be interested in having a discussion around what that could look like? I said, yes, and let's figure out, exactly how we're going to get that done. But it's a brand that's been around, for 35 years. They started in 1989. They've done some truly phenomenal things and some groundbreaking things in craft beer. And in my mind, that was worth keeping alive.
Just the brand value itself is something I think that brings something to you guys to be able to either capitalize off of or be able to bring more to the spotlight and being able to have a legacy type name in the Boston area. Were those the big appealing parts for you, and knowing what that what you could build it either as yourself or what it already has been?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Cambridge, they're certainly one of the sort of forefathers of craft beer here in Massachusetts, right up there with Harpoon and Boston Beer. I think CBC kind of falls next in line in terms of, the early bricklayers, if you will. And certainly everyone knows Phil and especially Will Myers, the brewmaster, as being, really tight on quality and being very particular in a good way on how their beer is made, and the fact that they A, trusted us to make it under contract for them, and B, then ultimately trusted us to continue doing so with ownership and control of the brand, to us felt a lot like a feather in a cap. As a brewery that's not even at a decade old yet, I think we're still one of the newer guys in the room, but to get the sort of the tap from an industry veteran like those guys felt really cool. And it's a lot of responsibility. I mean, we don't want to mess anything up with the brand, obviously, but we feel like we'll be good stewards of it and make sure that the CBC brand lives on exactly as people expect it to.
Sure. And I just saw that what kind of led to us having this discussion. I saw you guys finally did get around to putting a couple beers on tap in your tap rooms in Norwood and South Boston. I'm sure it was a welcome sight to fans of the CBC, but also to your company just being able to say, "See, we are following through. We took over the brand. It's being brewed. Here it is." What were those first ones, and how do you kind of reintroduce what CBC is through Castle Island?
Yeah, great question. So Amber and Flower Child are the two beers that we've been making for them under contract for the last give or take year. So those are the easiest ones to turn on. We're also keeping them in distribution year round. So that's been a seamless transition for us. So in terms of what we're going to put on tap, that was the easiest place to start.
Yeah.
Those are the two beers that really kind of put CBC on the map over the years. I think they're most people's entry points into the CBC brand. They also fit with our lineup really, really well. We don't make an amber ale. I think in the 10 years we've been around, we've only made one or two. But we've definitely seen people, I'm not going to say abandoning IPA, but mixing in other styles to kind of balance out some of that hop intensity with something a little more malty and mild.
Yeah.
So an amber ale is a great year-round addition for us to have on. Flower Child as well. You know, we do a West Coast IPA under the Castle Island brand name, under Keeper, which is a great beer, but that's an aggressive, piney, resiny West Coast hop IPA. Flower Child's a little more mellow, a little more balanced, a little more nuanced, and that's a really nice addition to the portfolio too. So in terms of bringing those beers online, you know, we've done a little bit of staff training with people here, but really what we're trying to remind people is that we've actually been making these two beers for the last year already. So you're not going to taste any difference in quality. Everything's going to be exactly as you've always known it to be. We're just putting it, you know, in a new home now that the Cambridge location is no longer open.
And there's a lot going on like that now with breweries, you know, being approached either or approaching breweries that are looking to be acquired. When it comes to that type of thought process, you do have some overlap with things, whether it's employees or product or exactly, you know, mentality of how you guys go. How are you meshing these two? What can Cambridge bring in that's something like you said you got with an amber that you guys haven't been able to do? Is there other things in that portfolio that you're excited to see and work on? Anything that for the future going into this spring and summer?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like I mentioned, Castle Island's always been very distribution focused. So when you look at our portfolio, when you look at the beers that are year rounders or even limited releases, they definitely play towards strengths that work really well with, you know, Miller Coors distributors or AB distributors, big houses that do better with large volume and not necessarily niche brands. CBC, as a pub brewery primarily, they've, you know, created thousands, literally thousands of recipes and done some truly innovative stuff that just won't work in distribution, either because the economics aren't right or you're never going to hit the scale that you need to make it work. So we're really excited to tap into their book that's been incredibly innovative and forward thinking and implement that within our tap rooms. It'd be great to be able to take something like Blunderbuss, their, you know, really incredibly well-known barley wine, and put that into distribution. 2025, that's not going to happen. The market's just not ready for it yet. It's kind of like Back to the Future, you know, when they're playing, it's like, I don't think they're ready for it yet. But the fact that we've got two taproom locations where we can start to pull these recipes back out of the archive and play around with them in sort of a controlled environment is really exciting to us, because it's never been as much of a focus for us as it was for CBC over the years, and this kind of gets us a jump start.
Sure. When it comes to taking in the just the IP of everything, making sure, was that important, you know, to you to keep that, not just be like, okay, we're going to take Flower Child and we're going to slap a Castle Island logo on it? I mean, these are a brand within a company that you guys want to continue to go forward with. Was that important for you?
Yeah, not only was it important for us, that was the deal. So we actually purchased the IP and the brands from CBC. We didn't we purchased some cooperage, but outside of that, we didn't purchase any equipment from them. No real estate. We weren't able to take over any employees because we weren't really absorbing any of the operations. We're just taking on the brands. But that was really critical to us, and that was critical to Phil, because the Cambridge brand family is where the value is, and CBC Amber and Flower Child and Charles River Porter and all these wonderful brands with wonderful recipes. If we took them and all of a sudden stickered Castle Island over it, it loses all of that foundation that's been built for the last 35 years. So we really wanted to preserve that. And we're now kind of functionally operating as two brand families under one common roof, which is, it's a new pair of pants for us. We're still getting used to it, but that's the way that we're strategizing forward.
Do you see anything new coming out of Cambridge at all? Or are you going to run through the portfolio and let it kind of be its own thing? Or do you have ideas of it can be a legacy type of brand and be able to put kind of those brew pub favorites under that name, even if it's something that maybe they'd never done before. How do you decide going forward? What is a Cambridge beer? What's a Castle Island beer?
Yeah, so everything that we bought from Cambridge is going to remain a Cambridge beer, and everything that has been a Castle Island beer will remain a Castle Island beer. At some point, we'll probably start playing around with new ideas under the Cambridge name, but we've got such a tome of recipes that we can comb through, some of which haven't seen the light of day, and probably longer than Castle Island's been around. That we'd really love to resuscitate and bring back, and give some daylight. Eventually, we'll probably create some new, true ground-up innovation under Cambridge. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, yeah. Anything for expanding the brand name outside of where it was? Like you said, distribution is a completely different game, probably something that they weren't as involved in. Do
Yeah.
you see yourself being able to use this as a platform to be able to bring it to the masses more?
For sure, and slowly and in time, but in a deliberate manner. So CBC actually self-distributed their brand within Cambridge itself, and then they used a wholesaler for the rest of Massachusetts, and they were in a couple of other states, and over the years have sort of retreated from those states. We're now plugged in with the Shia network in Massachusetts, and we're putting our own sales team and marketing team behind that brand as well, which is something that CBC has never really invested in because they were always focused on the pub, sold a little bit through distribution to satisfy local accounts. I do think that long-term, there's a lot of value in the Cambridge brand. The name Cambridge itself has cachet. People travel to our part of the country just to go to Cambridge a lot of the time.
Right.
So there is a lot of ability for the brand to travel, but for where the market's at right now, we're still focused on local. We are absolutely employing our own distribution strategy of inch wide, mile deep, and really, really digging into the strongest account base we can here within our home territory, within Massachusetts, before we look beyond our state borders.
Sure. How about just what things have been going on? Like you said, 2025 is a new year, but it's been a struggle for the past few years. How have you guys adapted and pivoted? I mean, those seem to be some key words. I'm sure there's things that you probably thought you wanted to do that you haven't been able to do, and some things you never thought you would do that you wouldn't, never got around to doing. So, what have been
Yeah.
those changes for you guys? We've talked a little bit about them, obviously, with the contract brewing, but is there anything else that you see that is a key for you guys in either growth or continuing where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of, I feel like pivot was the big word between like 2020 and 2023. A lot of pivots we went through during that time I never want to do again. We distilled, I think 600 gallons of keeper into 11 gallons of ethanol to make hand sanitizer. I never, ever, ever want to do that again. But between contract brewing, opening tap rooms, seasonal beer gardens, pop-up beer gardens, diving into private events. So private events has been a really big one for us. Prior to, 2025? Prior to 2023, we didn't have a private events manager. We now have a full-time private events manager. We're actually bringing in an assistant private events manager because we've got in the South Boston facility a 100-person private event room. We can also do full buyouts for up to 400 people. And then in our Norwood location, we can do full buyouts for up to 200 people. So we've got, one, soon to be two guys who are running this entire program and really bringing in like weddings, graduations. This past weekend, we had the most elaborate first birthday party I think I've ever heard of in my life. But that's a whole other segment of the business that we never really focused on. And there's a huge opportunity for growth there. But I think I just touched on what is really sort of our operative word as we head into 2025, which is focus. We've got 7 year-round brands right now. We've also got a variety 12-pack. We've got 7 different limited releases that come out over the course of the year. And that's just under the Castle Island umbrella, and that's just what's in distribution. When you layer in the tap rooms and the CBC brand, it's a whole lot more moving parts. It's great and it's wonderful and it's fun to have all those toys and tools in the tool belt. But what we're really starting to do now is hone our focus on what's working, what makes sense, where's the growth, and driving forward on those initiatives. Because I think that as craft beer continues to face the headwinds it's faced the last couple of years, and by all crystal ball readings, 2025 is going to be another one of them. Focus and sharpening the tools we've got is really where the success is going to come from.
Yeah. Going back to the event center space stuff, and I mean, you want to talk about pivots. I mean, you guys started as a production brewery, and like you said,
Yeah.
now you're talking about hiring an assistant events coordinator. Why has craft beer changed so much? Is it the consumer, or is it the fact that we're seeing that consumers will continue to come to us if we become a little more than what we thought we were 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So the consumer population is definitely part of it, right? Our core consumer has always kind of been the millennial generation. I think
Yeah.
I'm technically a millennial myself, although elder millennial, I guess, is the subclass of that genre. But we've all got, we've got a lot of us have families, we've got young kids, we've got careers, maybe we've got a mortgage. It's like we've got all these responsibilities, and so craft beer now has to fit into our lives, not the other way around.
Mhm.
So because of that, ourselves and other breweries need to be focused on like how do we curate these experiences for that core demographic. But at the same rate, we can't just rely on one 10-ish year age group of people to sustain us. So we've got to be tapping into new drinkers, looking towards the older generations. I think we can probably rely on a lot of the same sorts of techniques that we have in the past, but looking towards younger generations who traditionally aren't drinking as much alcohol as millennial and elder generations are, we've got to find new ways to connect with them. So that means beer alternatives. We're doing hard seltzers and hard lemonades and hard ciders in our tap room. That means
Yeah.
more experiential programming. Next month, we're bringing back for the second time a tattoo pop up at our South Boston location. These guys actually wheel in a couple of beds and they'll rip out tattoos for like 8 hours on a Sunday afternoon. So we're doing all sorts of fun programming like that to try and connect with new people, and at the same time expanding our menus even beyond beer and cider. We've got wine. We're going to be starting to get the slushies when the warmer weather comes around. It's all about sort of creating this experience that makes us a place to be fun, to come hang out, and we're not necessarily this niche brand and it's all 100% about beer. I think
Yeah.
looking at it, broad picture, something that Castle Island's always been focused on is like how do we create a party environment where everyone's welcome, and not how do we focus on making the world's best beer. There's a lot of value in focusing on making the world's best beer. I get that. But in my mind, what's cool about craft beer, what's always been cool about beer in general, is the ability to bring people together. And whether it's, an attorney in a suit, or you've got an oyster farmer coming off the grant and they're in their yellow bibs or something like that, they can both be sitting at the bar drinking beer. You don't see them drinking wine. You don't see them drinking fancy cocktails. If they're drinking the same thing, they're drinking beer. And that's powerful. And that's what we've been harnessing for the last 10 years.
That's awesome. Have you gotten on the bed for the tattoo pop-up? Any
I
tattoos coming up?
haven't. I,
No?
I haven't. And only because I was out of town the last time around. This time, I actually might if I can get a slot. I think we had 16 slots last time, and they all sold out in about an hour. They're like, you
Wow.
have to pre reserve them.
Yeah.
We've got 3 artists coming back this time, so we're gonna have 3 times as many slots. Hopefully, I can get on this one. We're also doing this on Super Bowl Sunday, so I have no idea what kind of tattoos we're gonna be seeing. It's gonna be wild.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun. Well,
For sure.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk a little business with us and about things are going. Congratulations on this. Best wishes for things going forward
Thank
on
you.
that. So it sounds like you guys have an idea for this, not just a hey, we're going to do this and see what it goes to. Like you've put some thought process behind this. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
But I want to end things. I was told I'm boring at the end of these things, so I came up with some questions, and that's my wife talking, of course. She's like, she's like, you never end on fun. She's like, she watches way too many podcasts, and she's like, do some fun stuff at the end. So you're my guinea pig for this, Adam. You ready for this?
I love it. Let's do it.
All right, I'll give you three different topics. You pick one, and we'll finish up with this. So,
Cool.
do you want to talk about Wicked? Do you want to talk about Google, or do you want to talk about music?
Oh, let's talk about music. Easy.
Music. Okay.
Easy.
A band or artist you secretly like: Nickelback, Creed, or Taylor Swift?
T Swift. 100%. And not secretly.
There's not even a secret.
Not even
I
a
can
secret. No,
honestly.
no, no.
What is so then? What's some Taylor Swift stuff, like that is not. I guess I'm a little older generation, so like I was in Nashville with my parents for was it CBC 24? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
CBC was 24, right? Or 23. I don't remember either or.
I can't
But
remember. Yeah,
yeah, and there was a Taylor. I think Taylor Swift was in town uh, for during CBC, and there was so much Taylor Swift being played at like Acme Feed and Seed. Let's say we went out to eat there. I did
yeah,
not know one song. I know shit off. That's it. Like that's where my I draw the line. I have no hate for Taylor Swift,
yeah.
and but what makes you? Some people hate her because of overexposure, probably. What
Sure.
makes you be a Swiftie?
Um, so I mean, I'll go ahead and just go on record as saying her tunes are super catchy. I think the lyric writing's great. My 4-year-old son is obsessed with the song "Shake It Off," and watching a little
Yeah.
4-year-old like shake it off is absolutely one of the best parts of my day. So that's a feature of it as well. I'm also a runner, and she's got some tunes that like they just work when you're running. She does this song called "Bad Blood." There's one version she collabs with Kendrick Lamar, who I also love. So that is what kind of got me into the Swiftie scene. I'm not like a Swiftie super fan. I don't know the whole catalog, but I definitely enjoy her tunes.
So that's not going to be the tattoo for you then.
I'm not going to be getting a Swiftie tattoo anytime soon. No.
All right. We'll wrap it up with one last one. This one is which brewery do you wish you had opened, or which beer brand do you wish you have created?
Oh man, what an intense question. It's so overused, I'm sure, but like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, I wish I came up with that back in the day. Like Ken nailed it, man. The
Yeah,
brand, the liquid, the legacy, all of it is just amazing. That'd be a really cool one to be able to take credit for. But it's also cool having those guys serve as a beacon for the rest of us, something to chase.
absolutely. Well, Adam, thanks so much for being my guinea pig on that.
Yeah, man, happy to do it. That was a blast.
All right. Cheers.
Take care, John. Cheers, man.